There are 298 prisoners on death row in the state of Florida. This is part 15 of the series. Juan Rodriguez, 67 years old, 33 years on death row. Rodriguez was found guilty of Abelardo Saladriga's first-degree murder, armed robbery, conspiring to commit a crime, attempted armed robbery, armed burglary with an assault, aggravated assault, and an attempted first-degree murder. The incidents that led to these convictions took place over the course of 2 days. On April 22, 1988, Rodriguez visited a bondsman and got to know Ramon Fernandez and Carlos Sponsa there. Rodriguez's bail was paid for by Fernandez, who provided the bondsman the title to his car. Rodriguez told Fernandez that he would be able to pay him back with the money. Sponsa and Fernandez met with Rodriguez on May 13, 1988, to seek the unpaid bail money. The two men were instructed to accompany Rodriguez to an auto parts store because he knew where they could acquire the money. Sponsa and Fernandez were directed by Rodriguez to wait in their car outside the front of the shop while he made his way around the rear. Rodriguez approached Abelardo Saladrigas at the store's back exit after spotting him. In order to get Saladrigas's briefcase and watch, Rodriguez pulled a revolver on him. Saladrigas did not obey. Rodriguez shot him 4 times, stole his watch and briefcase, and then fled back to his car. Sponsa and Fernandez asserted that they ran away as soon as they heard the opening shot. Later, Rodriguez gave Fernandez the other half of the $1,200 he had discovered in the suitcase. The Rolex watch was kept by Rodriguez for himself. Before he passed away, Saladrigas was able to recount the events to a member of his family, a police officer, and a store employee. Saladrigas suffered 2 wounds to his right arm, 1 to the upper left chest, 1 to the right knee, 1 to the right chest, and 2 fatal wounds to the right chest as well. Saladrigas's body had 6 wounds, but the medical examiner determined that 4 of them were compatible with gunshot wounds. Rodriguez, Fernandez, and other men made an attempt to rob a home the day after the murder. The homeowner had a gun and fired 3 shots at the men, but they were unsuccessful. One of the criminals Rodriguez was traveling with fired back once. Fernandez was detained 3 weeks after the attempted home invasion robbery. He admitted to taking part in both the attempted robbery and the crime at the auto parts store. Rodriguez was detained when Fernandez admitted to authorities that he had shot Saladrigas. Francisco Reyes stated that he offered Rodriguez $3,000 to kill Fernandez in the county jail before Rodriguez's trial, saying that if Fernandez died, the state would no longer have a witness for the case against him. Rodriguez was found guilty of every charge in the indictment on January 31, 1990. He received a death sentence on March 28, 1990 for the murder of Saladrigas. Ronald Heath, 62 years old, 33 years on death row. To visit Heath's grandmother in Jacksonville, Ronald Heath and his roommate Penny Powell took a car. Powell returned to their home in Douglas, Georgia, following a disagreement with Heath. Heath and his brother Kenneth took the car to Gainesville to visit some acquaintances. Heath and Kenneth visited 2 of Heath's buddies who were waitresses at the Purple Purpose Lounge that evening, May 24, 1989. The boys struck up a conversation with Sheridan, a traveling salesman, throughout the course of the evening. He bought the brothers a drink and then asked if they used Mary Jane. The brothers agreed to rob Sheridan at a different location at Heath's suggestion. The group was transported by Heath and Kenneth's car to a remote part of Alachua County. All 3 of them got out of the car after Heath had parked it on a dusty road and started smoking Mary Jane. Heath then questioned Kenneth, "Did you get it?" while waving a revolver in the air. Kenneth returned with a small caliber handgun after reaching under the car's seat. Sheridan was told he was being robbed as Kenneth pointed a gun at him. When Sheridan made it clear that he wouldn't be giving the brothers anything, Heath encouraged Kenneth to shoot Sheridan once in the chest. Heath kicked Sheridan as he started to remove his belongings, stabbed him in the neck with a hunting knife, and made an unsuccessful effort to slit his throat. Then, after getting the go-ahead from Keith, Kenneth shot Sheridan twice in the head with the gun. When they got back to the Purple Purpose, they moved Sheridan's rental car to a different spot and burned it after removing some items. They then moved the body farther into the woods. The brothers used Sheridan's credit cards the next day to make a number of purchases at a Gainesville shopping center. Even though Kenneth had signed all of the credit card slips, several store employees were able to identify Heath from a photo lineup. After being confronted with biographical inquiries they were unable to adequately respond to, the brothers stopped using the credit cards and went back to Jacksonville. The handgun they threw into the St. Johns River was never found. Heath went back to the Georgia trailer he and Powell shared. Several weeks after the murder, Heath was detained at his trailer for using the credit cards that had been taken. Powell granted the officers permission to search the trailer. The police discovered Sheridan's watch and several apparel items that had been bought with his credit cards. Guillermo Arbella, 66 years old, 32 years on death row. On February 14, 1988, Guillermo Arbella was found guilty and given the death penalty for the abduction and murder of Julio Rivas, a 5-year-old boy. Arbella met the victim's mother, Graciela Alfara, at a cafeteria where she was a waiter. After a while, Arbella moved in with Alfara, paying $150 a month for a room he would share with Alfara's cousin, who was 19 years old. Soon after Arbella moved in, the two of them got close, but when Alfara accused him of essaying one of her daughters, the relationship quickly terminated. Alfara gave the defendant till February 15, 1988 to leave. Arbella claimed that he and Alfara, who were scheduled to be married on February 15, 1988, were still together at the time, but on February 13, Alfara returned home after hours with a different man, and Arbella saw her kiss him goodnight. Alfara slept the following morning, and Arbella removed her son Julio Rivas from the house. At Alfara's workplace, Arbella made a coffee stop, and observers noted that he appeared composed and normal. There, Arbella told a friend of his that Alfara had been unfaithful and that he was going to do something to ensure that she would never forget him. Arbella drove to the top of the Powell Bridge after leaving the cafeteria, pulled over, and raised the hood of his vehicle to make it appear as though he had broken down. The youngster was then grabbed by the arms and thrown over the edge of the 70-foot-high bridge by Arbella. He then sped away from the incident, left his car in a nearby neighborhood, and made his way to the house of his buddy, Pedro Salazar. Arbella admitted to Salazar that he wished to get revenge on Alfara. He took a flight to Puerto Rico before returning to his native country of Colombia, where he was found on March 16, 1988, by Miami cops. He was detained at Miami International Airport on April 11, 1988, as soon as he exited customs. A medical examiner testified during Julio Rivas' trial that he drowned and he was also strangled to death. The boy's body had numerous huge bruises and his head had numerous abrasions. The pathologist concluded that these injuries were sustained before he passed away. Alfara said in court that her son didn't have the scrapes and bruises the morning he was taken. William Sweet, 56 years old, 32 years on death row. William Sweet was found guilty of killing 13-year-old Felicia Bryant and he received a death sentence. 3 men physically harassed and robbed Marcine Kofer in her apartment in June 1990. Kofer was able to place 2 of her attackers by name, and on June 26, 1990, she was transported to the police station to use photos to try to place the 3rd attacker. The following evening, Detective Robinson returned Kofer to her apartment. As Kofer left the detective, William Sweet was observing from a distance. Sweet had already named himself to a friend as the 3rd person responsible for the assault and robbery. Kofer asked her next-door neighbor, Mattie Bryant, if she could let her 2 children, Felicia and Sharon Bryant, stay with her in her apartment that same evening. Around 8 p.m., Mattie consented, and the girls headed over to Kofer's house. Sharon reported hearing a loud kick on the apartment door about 1 a.m. Kofer was awakened, and she told her about the noise. Kofer looked around and urged Sharon not to be concerned because it seemed that whoever had been there had left. Kofer then returned to her bed. Sharon again informed Kofer when she noticed someone yanking on the screen in the living room. Then Kofer peered through her front door's peephole and saw Sweet standing in front of the flat. Felicia was instructed by Kofer to bang on the bathroom wall in order to wake her neighbor and mother, Mattie Bryant. A few minutes later, Mattie hurried over. Kofer was positioned at the end of the line behind the door as the other 3 women lined up. William Sweet pushed his way inside the apartment as they tried to escape while attempting to hide his face with a pair of jeans. Sweet started shooting at Kofer before moving on to the other 3 women. It was 6 shots. Both Kofer and Felicia received 2 shots. The gunshot wounds to Felicia's abdomen and hand caused her death. On June 28, 1990, William Sweet was detained. Stephen Taylor, 54 years old, 32 years on death row. Taylor was found guilty of killing Alice Vest and given the death penalty. On September 15, 1990, at around 11:30 p.m., Vest arrived at her mobile home. Taylor and his co-defendant Gerald Murray were dropped off close to the victim's area at around midnight after traveling around and listening to the radio with a third person. A Ford Ranchero was reported missing from the same region early on September 16, 1990. At about 4:30 that morning, a bystander saw the car close to Vest's house. Later the same day, the car was discovered behind a car dealership close to Taylor's home. Vest's body was discovered in her bedroom by a neighbor on the morning of September 16. The medical examiner claims that Vest was essayed. A knife and some scissors that were discovered at the scene were also used to stab her about 20 times. Vest had further wounds, including head wounds and a broken jaw that was probably caused by being struck with a bottle, while the other head wounds were probably brought on by being struck with a metal bar and candlestick. The lamp, metal bar, and bottle were all discovered on the spot. The medical examiner discovered bruising on her chest as well. Trial testimony indicated that the phone line had been disconnected. Vest's home had been broken into and jewelry had been stolen. Taylor and his roommate left the duplex they had been residing in December 1990. The next month, Taylor's former roommate removed the fence from the property. He discovered a jewelry-filled sack that was buried while taking down the fence. The former roommate submitted a statement and turned over the valuables to the police. It was discovered that the jewelry was taken the night of the murder and robbery from Vest's house. Taylor went back to the duplex in January 1991 with pals to see his former roommate. The roommate saw Taylor enter the backyard and walk over to where he had previously removed the fence to have a look. The following month, Taylor and his friends paid their old roommate another visit. Taylor entered the backyard and proceeded to the spot where the fence had formerly been. He entered the duplex from the backyard with dirt on his hands, according to a witness who had been at the complex with Taylor. In his testimony, he also stated that when he asked Taylor what he was doing, Taylor responded that he was looking for something that was not where he had left it. Taylor's blood, saliva, and hair samples were taken on February 14, 1991, with the help of a search warrant obtained by the Duval County Sheriff's Office. Taylor inquired after the samples had been taken as to when the results would be available. The officer asked Taylor why was he curious. The genetic material discovered on Vest's clothing matched Taylor's DNA profile, according to testimony from a Florida Department of Law Enforcement expert. Taylor's cellmate, Timothy Cowart, gave testimony throughout the trial. Cowart claims that Taylor said to have participated in an unsuccessful burglary. Taylor said that he and an accomplice had been robbing a mobile home when the owner returned home, and he had stabbed and strangled her. Taylor also admitted that he strangled the girl to make sure that she died. Additionally, Cowart alleged that Taylor had asserted that the prosecution had presented sufficient evidence to support a conviction. Taylor allegedly requested Cowart for help with an escape strategy. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.